Good morning. Happy Thursday. Jeff Gray made a video yesterday or the day before. I don't know exactly when he made it. I watched it yesterday, so I might be a little fuzzy. But he asked two questions. Initially, he asked, was it a retaliatory stop? And then towards the end of the video, he asked, was it a valid stop, and to leave a comment. Well, this is my comment for Jeff Gray. As to the relevant facts as I see them, the relevant facts as I see them were that a cop pulled behind Jeff Gray, ran Jeff Gray's license plate. It came back to a female owner of the vehicle who did not have a valid driver's license. The officer then stopped Jeff Gray and went up to Jeff Gray, asked if Jeff Gray was the registered owner of the vehicle. Jeff Gray said no, it belonged to his niece, sister, whoever. And then the officer said, well, have a great night, and left. So those, to me, are the important facts. You may disagree. Jeff Gray thinks it's important that the officer was conducting a speed trap. He was parked in a gas station and waiting for oncoming traffic, or at least Jeff Gray assumes that was the case. So when Jeff Gray passed, Jeff Gray flashed his lights at oncoming traffic to warn them of the speed trap, and he believes the stop is retaliatory. Was the stop retaliatory? I don't know. The cop could have been pissed off at Jeff Gray for doing it. The cop could have simply noticed Jeff Gray because he was flashing his brights and might have just wanted to check it out. Who knows? I can't read a cop's mind. I don't want to read a cop's mind. Was it retaliatory? I don't know. The more important question, at least to me, and the one that Jeff Gray apparently thought was more important because it's the one he asked for a comment on, was it a valid stop? There's two things you have to determine whether you have to determine whether it's a valid stop. Number one, was it a search? I guess three things. Four things. One, was it a search? Two, if it was a search, was it a valid search? Three, was it a seizure? And four, if it was a seizure, was it a valid seizure? Four things. Okay. Number one, was it a search? No, it was not. The state of the Fourth Amendment law, and this is what we're dealing with, is the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment deals with searches and seizures. The touchstone of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness. You have the right to be secure in your person, papers. You have a right to security in your stuff, in your privacy, your house. You don't have a right to be free from the police seeing things that are in plain view, number one, and your license plate is in plain view. And number two, the license plate is issued by the state for the purpose of identifying your vehicle. It is there for them to run the numbers. That's the purpose of it. So it's not a search. And then when they do run those numbers, they're running it against their database. You might be in their database, but it's not your database. It's their database. So it's not a search. Now, whether it should be a search, whether they should be requiring probable cause in order for them to do it, that's a different topic. That's a political or a philosophical view. I think they shouldn't run your plates without probable cause, but that's not the current state of the law. The current state of the law is that they could run your plates at any time, every time, whenever, and it's not a search. Now, you're going to say, being the astute person that you are, that, well, I've heard of cops get in trouble for running people's plates when it was for personal reasons. Yeah. They get in trouble and they violated their agreement with the state. They haven't violated your Fourth Amendment rights. You don't have a cause of action against them for running it, but the state does, because the state gives them that tool to use for the state's purpose and not for their own personal reasons. So just so you're aware, that's the distinction there. They're not violating your Fourth Amendment right by doing it. They're violating their contract with the state, their employment agreement with the state, their usage agreement with the state, etc. And you don't have a cause of action against it. You can't get it thrown out of court, whatever. It's still, I mean, if it comes up, if they're using it for their own personal reasons because that you passed them and they thought you were hot and they were like, hey, I want to check this honey bunny out, and they run the plate and turns out that you've got a warrant, well, I mean, you can't suppress it at that point, even though they were doing it for their own personal reasons, but they can still get in trouble for having done it from their employer, for running it for their own personal reasons. Anyway, it's not a search. So we don't have to determine whether or not it was a valid search because it's not a search. Now, the stop. Was it a stop? Absolutely it was. A stop is a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. Once they pull your car over, it is required at a minimum reasonable suspicion. Your state may set that bar higher, but it's at a minimum reasonable suspicion that that crime is afoot. Minimum. In this case, did they have at a minimum reasonable suspicion? And yes, they did. Once the cop was aware that the registered owner of the vehicle did not possess a valid driver's license, then the cop had probable cause, which is higher than reasonable suspicion. It's lower than preponderance of the evidence. It's above reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is basically meaningless. Any person with two brain cells connected by a synapse can come up with reasonable suspicion for just about anything. It's a sad commentary on police officers that they so often fail to do so. It's really sad. But probable cause is not that much higher. There is the old saying that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich, and that saying exists for a reason. And Michelle commented, "Oh, you didn't say that the judge rubber stamped these warrants. It's probable cause. All the people had to show to get the warrants was probable cause. Probable cause is basically meaningless at this point. It is some probability. Like if you're playing roulette, let's just say there's 30 wedges on. There might be 50. I don't know how many there are. I don't really care. But each one of those results on the roulette wheel, there's a probability that you're going to get that number. There's a probability. Probable cause, no court that I'm aware of has ever set a percentage value for probable cause. Is it a 5% likelihood? 10%? 15%? We know it's less than 50% because that's a different standard. That's preponderance of the evidence. 50 plus anything is you win by preponderance of the evidence. Below 50%, by anything is you lose because preponderance of the evidence. But who knows what probable cause is? It's a ridiculously low standard, not as bad as reasonable suspicion, but it is ridiculously low. And courts have determined that probable cause is established by finding out the registered owner of the vehicle doesn't have a valid driver's license. That it's probable that the registered owner of the vehicle is the one driving the vehicle. It's probable. That doesn't mean it's 50% plus. It doesn't mean it's 100%, but it's probable. There's a probability there. Courts have established that. We don't have to rehash it. That's the way the law is. So there is a probability that the owner of that vehicle is the one driving the vehicle. Cop has probable cause for the stop. Now, when he walks up to the vehicle, he sees that Jeff Gray is a male, not a female. The registered owner of the vehicle was a female. I don't know how woke Florida is. Maybe they play the whole game where you are what you identify as. I don't know. Don't really care. But the officer looking at the report or remembering the report sees Jeff Gray is not the registered owner of the vehicle, obviously. And yet he still asks. Why does he ask? Well, because cops like to fish. They can fish. I mean, they can't unreasonably delay the stop. Once probable cause was gone, he can't unreasonably delay it. But he can say, hey, are you the registered owner of the vehicle? Because who knows? Jeff Gray might have just stolen the vehicle and might not know the registered owner of the vehicle is a female. And so Jeff Gray might say, yes, I am the registered owner of the vehicle. Well, then the cop would have at least reasonable suspicion at that point, maybe even probable cause that Jeff Gray might have stolen the vehicle. So it didn't hurt for the cop. And from the cop's point of view, it didn't hurt for the cop to ask. Jeff Gray gave an answer that made it fairly clear that Jeff Gray was not the owner of the vehicle, and Jeff Gray knew who the owner of the vehicle was. And so there is nothing for the cop to operate on that point. He doesn't have reasonable suspicion. He doesn't have probable cause. The stop needs to end, and he ends the stop. I saw some people in Jeff Gray's comments were saying that the cop recognized Jeff Gray and turned about, tucked tail, and ran. I don't think so, because he saw Jeff Gray when he first walked up, and he still asked the question. Reason why he asked the question? Taking a shot in the dark, see if we got probable cause. Maybe Jeff Gray just stole the vehicle. Let's find out, right? Anyway, so long story short, now that I've made it a long story, was it retaliatory? Don't know. Have no answer. We can only guess. We're not the cop. Was it valid? Yes, it was a valid stop. Does that mean I agree with everything I said? That I think that's the way it should be? No, but that's the state of the law. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.